Hello and welcome to the wonderful world of math. Today we're going to be looking at graphing, and we're going to be doing that with practice points set 17, page 3. We're going to look through and interpret this graph and answer some questions about it at the bottom. So first, we always want to read the introduction paragraph to let us know some more about this graph. The students of Mr. McJimmer's class planted lima bean seeds. After 2 weeks, the students found the height of their bean plants. Use the graph below to help you answer the following questions. Okay, so if you notice, we have a title here that says heights of bean plants. We have a graph that has 3 different people's plants on it, and it has height in inches going across our x-axis or our horizontal axis. Okay, this y-axis over here isn't labeled yet, but the y-axis is our vertical axis, our up and down. Okay, and our x-axis is our horizontal going across. Okay, so now let's go ahead and look at the questions and we can look through the graph together. Question number 1, what kind of graph is this? Is it a pictograph, a line graph, a bar graph, or a line plot? Okay, well if I think about these, a pictograph uses pictures of the actual items being described in the graph. This doesn't have any pictures in the graph, so it can't be a picture graph. A line graph always tells us information over time. This doesn't have anything about time, and it also doesn't have points that are connected by lines, so it can't be a line graph. A bar graph is a graph where we're comparing things and have separate bars for each item that we're comparing. So we have a bar for Dora's plant, a bar for Steve's plant, and a bar for Thomas's plant. A bar graph makes the most sense, but let's go ahead and check line plot just to make sure. A line plot, again, is going to have a line on it, and it's going to have points plotted onto it. That is not what we're seeing here, so that doesn't make sense. Our answer is C, a bar graph. Number 2 says, what would be the best label for the y-axis? So again, if you look up here at our graph, our y-axis is right here. It's our vertical axis. What is being talked about on this line? Well, we have Dora's plant, Steve's plant, Thomas's plant. So is it plant types, teacher names, student names, or Mr. McJimmer? There's some we should be able to get rid of altogether right away. Mr. McJimmer makes no sense. This nowhere on here does it talk anything about that specific teacher. Speaking of teachers, it doesn't at all say anything about any teacher names, so that doesn't make sense either. We have plant types and student names. Well, even though these are different plants, they are all the same type of plant, right? We know they're all lima bean seeds because we read this paragraph up here. So none of the plants are different types. They're simply just different students' plants. So our answer is student names, C. Find the height of each student's plant. So Dora's plant. If we go to Dora and we come over here, there's a couple things you can do. One, you can go to the end and kind of take your pencil, go straight down. I sometimes like to go out a little bit so I can see it there on my graph and figure out. It's between 2 and 3, but we're going to have to write this as a fraction. So let's see here. I know my whole number is going to be 2. How can I figure out my fraction? Well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 parts within each whole number. So my denominator is going to be 4 because 4 parts would make a whole, and my denominator is always the whole amount. Now my line goes through 1, 2, 3 of those parts. So my numerator is going to be 3. Dora's plant is 2 3/4 inches. For Steve, all right, we're going to go with Steve. We're going to go all the way over here, draw our line down. Okay, with Steve, there's a couple things we can look at. We can look at the fact that this would be fourths again, or we can see that this is right in the middle between 6 and 7. And we know that the fraction that's right in the middle is 1/2. So you can tell that this half and this half between the two numbers is the exact same size. So we can write this answer as 6 1/2 inches. If you had 6 2/4, that is totally correct as well. Okay, and Thomas's plant, all right? Thomas's plant, we're going to draw that line down. We know the whole number is 4 because it's a little bit after 4. We still know that there's 4 parts in each, so I'm going to put 4 in my denominator. And Thomas's plant had 1 part out of those 4. So Thomas's plant was 4 1/4 inches. Our last question asks us to order the plants in height from least to greatest. So if we look at our numbers, we really just have to look at our whole numbers, because no matter what our fractions are that come with it, if the whole number is bigger or smaller, that's going to make that whole height bigger or smaller. So our smallest fraction is 2 3/4 inches. So Dora's plant is the shortest. We can either write Dora, or we can write 2 3/4. Next is going to be Thomas, because looking at the whole numbers again, 4 is the next. So Thomas is next with 4 1/4 inches. And lastly, the biggest plant is Steve's at 6 1/2 inches. All right, you were able to analyze that graph. Great job. If you have any questions about this, please remember to ask your teacher.